hearing on 30 Locust Street, special residential use, townhouse dwelling. Jim, do we need to continue with the reading, or can we start to get an update on what's happened?
Absolutely. It's a continued public hearing, so you're welcome to dispose of the reading and begin the hearing. And I believe the applicant is here this evening, which can certainly give you an update. While we're waiting on the applicant, just a brief update to the board. You do have in front of you a revised set of plans, and as well as BSC's response to comments. I see Frank DiPietro here, who can certainly walk you through any outstanding issues that may be before this board. I know there are some minor issues still before conservation that needs to be worked through. But otherwise, you do have a full plan set ahead of you. As of last meeting, I know there was a request for a draft of conditions to start formulating that thought. Obviously, with further changes to the plan set that might need to be, or it may be warranted, it might not be prudent to go through those conditions right now, but I'll certainly leave it to the board.
Jim, at this point, since we have some issues pending with conservation, I think we want to leave the public meeting open.
Yes, that makes sense. Historically and good practice, you want to close the hearing with one set of full clean plan sets for all boards. So that certainly makes sense. And I see the project owner, Steve Benacasa, is on. I don't know if he would like to add anything to that.
And Jim, my understanding is there's also an issue or two that will be discussed at the next Conservation Commission meeting.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. I'll turn over to the applicant.
Yeah, if I could have my engineer, James Alamonte, just speak. That the issues with the conservation department, they had the decision, they told us that they were 98% complete with the certificate, with the order of conditions. And I'm just trying to think, so the only thing they were asking for was they had, and Frank can speak to this too, and I actually shouldn't be speaking about this, my engineer should be, there was a different way of designing the drainage, and they asked us to upgrade 3 pipes from 12 to 15 inch. So that to me is an extremely minor change, and I don't know if we can move the process along. The fact that we know that those are the changes, and I'm going to ask my engineer to verify that those are the only changes we're making.
Yeah, Jim and Commissioner, if you wouldn't mind if I could speak. It's Jim Almonte from Land Design Collaborative. Yeah, so we had the Conservation Commission hearing last night. There were some minor things that they requested. Steve mentioned there were some pipes that they wanted to see the size increase. And that should only affect maybe 1 or 2 sheets. So they requested that instead of issuing a whole, plan set, if we can just, reissue those sheets. If in fact, when we run those calculations that we find that that's required, which I believe they will be. So I think those were really the only plan changes. The other things they asked for were for some more detail in the O&M plan, which we will provide as well. But I believe those were the only changes that they requested. So
as far as plans themselves, it's only those 3 12-inch runs. They're going to be increased to 18 inch. Again, the rest of the information is just part of the operation and maintenance plan, which we've agreed to, which is not part of the plan set. So I know that there are other people that are anxious to move the process along, and I want to do what's appropriate. And given that is, I believe, the sum of the changes, I'm just wondering if it would be okay to move the process along. And I guess that's a question for the board.
I'm sure we can make that decision before the end of the evening.
Thank you.
So just the plan with the Conservation Commission is these should be pretty quick changes. So we plan to have information back to them and to the town next week prior to the continued hearing with them, which is on the 23rd. So I believe the plan was to finalize the order then and, hopefully move forward at that point.
I think based on what we find out tonight, that seems to be a reasonable schedule
Mhm.
moving forward. So can you
Great.
bring us up to date on what has happened since our last meeting?
Sure. So most of it was stormwater related. With the Conservation Commission, they had requested us to do the soils testing now as opposed to prior to construction. So we did soils testing a few weeks ago, thankfully before the ground completely froze. In 5 out of the 6 basins, there were no surprises, all sand. I don't think we hit a rock the entire day. We did go 4 feet below the bottom of the basin with those test pits, and there were, like I said, there was no surprises. The material is what we expected it to be. We didn't encounter any impermeable barrier that we did get in one of the early borings. We didn't witness any of that with the testing that we did. There were some calculations that were performed. The commission also asked for some rooftop infiltration systems for some of the units, or for all of the units. The agreement that we came to with them is that we would take the front halves of the buildings and put them in underground and infiltration systems, which the revised plan set reflects. And then there was a request from one of the abutters on Lake Street to look at the sewer easement that runs through the cemetery. We did meet with them. Mr. Vinicasa met with the church, and we agreed to move the easement further away from their property as well, and that is also reflected on the plan set. I think those were pretty much the only changes to the most recent set.
I think that is.
I have one comment. Go ahead, sir, the applicant.
No, I was just concurring.
I can wait.
I was just concurring that those were all the changes, I believe.
All right, so I believe it was the Jollikers that had raised the issue
Mhm.
about the easement, and that have you spoken to them with the changes that you put in place?
Yes. Yep. We did.
They're happy?
They were very happy. Yes. We sent them the plan. We showed them where it was and where it now is, and they were very pleased that we did move that away from their property.
Okay. One thing I thought I might have heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, last night's Conservation Commission meeting, I think they agreed that you did not need fencing around the detention ponds.
Correct.
However, they want some small signage there.
That's correct.
And we can discuss that. Just speaking as one member of the board, if we could have that signage sort of blend into what would used to be at a golf course, when it says, cart stop here or something, just to make it, I know you're trying to make everything blend in. So if we could just, look at something that appeases the Conservation Commission, but is not overly, egregious, so to speak.
I think that
Well, we don't like to put signs anywhere, but signs are necessary at certain places to give people the guidance that they need and reminders. But the less signs we have, we think is more aesthetically pleasing the development is. So we want to do the minimum, but we want to do it appropriately.
Okay. Well, just as long as you follow the recommendations that they provided, and it meets your needs and the conservation and our needs, I think we should be fine.
So the big concerns were that the detention basins and the wetlands that they don't, the lawn maintenance people and that they don't fill those areas. This is something that we have no experience with because all the developments, we're right on top of our contractor, so we haven't had this problem. I know it does happen at places, but it has not happened in our projects, but I understand their reason for this and we're happy to comply. But we generally don't have a problem because it's professionally managed. When you have, 50 or 100 homeowners, it's nearly impossible to monitor. But with one landscape company, we can generally stay on top of it. But they could forget over time, so it's not a bad idea to have some kind of reminders out there.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have any questions? Brian?
No, I assume Frank's gonna talk. I might
Yeah,
have
he is.
questions after that, but
Okay.
nothing right now. Thank you.
Actually, Frank, it's probably an appropriate time to give the floor to you so you can give us an update from your viewpoint.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. So I put together a peer review letter, and again, pretty much consistent with what has already been said. There were test pits done in 5 out of the 6 infiltration basins. The material was very consistent with what had been seen in the borings done earlier. The only recommendations we would have is that there's one infiltration basin, essentially basin 6, that is going to be put in a very deep cut. So rather than dig a hole that would have been a crater a half a mile wide, that still needs to be investigated. And what we would recommend, that gets done just prior to construction when the site's being disturbed. The only other item we'd have with regard to the test pits is in the 5 test pits that were done in the other 5 infiltration basins, there was no barriers. In a couple of the original borings, there were some impervious barriers where there was perched water. In the test pits that were done, no impervious barriers were found, but just in case one is encountered when you dig in the entire hole, that soil should be removed. I don't think that's gonna happen, but just to cover that. With regards to the roof drains, the commission sort of came to an agreement, as Stephen had said, that is, you can look at and infiltrate the front part of the roofs from the buildings. The rear part will go overland into the infiltration basins. It turns out that the basins were sized for the entire roof. The design flow was for a 10-year storm, but they're larger than that. So my guess is that the infiltration for the roofs could probably handle the runoff from a 25-year storm. That hasn't been designed, but they're basically sized to be double the size they needed for the 10-year storm. So again, I have no issue with that. They provided a number of the design of each individual pipe that is a contributing piece of the on-site stormwater system. There were 3 sections that we thought they should maybe take another look at. That, as I said, I think these are 12-inch pipes, that maybe they go to a 15 or an 18-inch pipe. And that would then reduce some of the headwater upstream. They've agreed that they would do those for those 3 pipes. The pipes themselves, the location isn't going to change. Just the label on the plan, it will go from a 12-inch drain pipe to a 15 or an 18-inch drain pipe. So as far as the layout goes, it's not going to change. It's just the label for those 3 pipe systems, if they in fact determine they do need to increase those. There are a number of pending waivers that have been requested by the applicant, and a number of those relate to the planning board. So again, I think the board's going to need action on that. With regard to the Conservation Commission hearing last night, I just went over my notes, and it's pretty consistent that the applicant was going to look at whether they need to upgrade those 3 storm drain systems. They were going to do some modifications to the sort of the operations and maintenance, include who's going to be responsible, those kind of things. The commission would prefer no fencing. If they did put fencing in, they wanted a little barrier, wanted a little opening in the bottom so animals could crawl underneath it. But they would rather have some kind of signage that says, essentially, in nice words, don't dump your lawn cuttings in the infiltration basins. And they are in the process of finalizing. They're also adding in a question about, in the snow storage, include that as part of the ongoing operation and maintenance. And that if there was the snow storage as shown on the plan right now gets full, there would be a provision to move the excess snow material off the site. And that's really it. I have no further comments or questions, and be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Ron, you have any questions?
No, one question, and this might be for Jim or for you, Bill. In terms of sequencing, when are we going to take up the waivers, and how critical is it that if that happens tonight versus some other time?
Right, so historically, Bill, if it's okay, historically
Absolutely.
the board has taken in the waivers from the original application, and throughout the process has been guiding the applicant. The thought process through this process is that there's not an individual vote of each and every waiver. If there was concerns throughout the process, the board would raise those. That's not to mean that it's unanimous support as of this moment, but in the decision, unless unless any board member speaks up and says this needs to be modified, and the board all agrees, in the decision, those waivers will be present, and you'll vote on them at that time, if that's okay with the board. That's how we've historically done it.
I believe that's fine. Any other questions, Brian?
No, thank you.
Dennis?
I have nothing at this time.
Phil?
So from a process point of view, we've got a letter with the peer review for the 8th. Are we expecting a letter from the applicant addressing some of these things that they've agreed to waive or agreed to do?
We're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, so
It's coming
so
up
we
garbled
received
again.
the, sorry guys. So we received a letter from we've got peer review from February 8th. So typically we get a response from peer review from the applicant with the agreements that we've been talking about. Are we expecting a letter back agreeing to all this? Kind of like to see it.
I think the gist of his question, Frank, you gave them your comments. Have we received a letter addressing your comments from the applicant?
We have not. I will note that the my peer review letter was issued on the 8th of February, so they've only had it for a couple of days. In my opinion, I will defer to the board, but the outstanding items in there were very, very minor. And the applicant has verbally agreed, at least in conservation, and I believe you can hold them to this tonight as well. They would agree to undertake those minor edits that I noted in my peer review.
Frank, I think if we get something in writing to that effect, it would be a great step forward to you moving this forward. I don't think the applicant would disagree.
Sure. Would you like me to send you like an email or a letter? I probably can't do it tonight, but I could do it tomorrow morning. Is that?
That'd be fine. Copy Jim and the applicant on it.
Yeah,
Address your question.
the applicant's fine with that.
Okay. Liz?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Rob?
I am all set. Seems like there's just a few minor things left, so very minor. So no, I have no questions.
Jim, do you have any questions based on anything else this evening before I turn it over to the public?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Bill.
Dennis, again, you're all set. We can hear you.
Yep, I'm all set. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I'd like to open it now to the public. I see we have Sean Wade has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sean Wade, 17 Reservoir Drive. I was wondering, is it possible to see the revised easement plan for the cemetery?
I think that would be best answered by the applicant.
Sure, if I have it actually called up, I can share my screen.
Excellent.
Let's see.
And I said, Sean, I'm working on the assumption that if the Jolliks are happy, you know, we,
Oh, yeah. No, this is just for my own personal thing. And just clarifying, because it's my understanding that the planning board, well, he's pulling that up. The planning board is going to require the applicant to replace and pave the road after the sewer goes in, including the berms. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Excellent. And the applicant, in lieu of building sidewalks on the development, is going to be giving the town a sum of money. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
Has that sum of money been determined yet? And am I able to ask how much?
Jim, can you address that question? I believe you have a relatively solid figure.
Yeah, I'd shoot. Sorry, I don't have the exact number in front of me. The number was developed through working with DPW. The applicant identified the linear feet that would be constructed on their site. And we made I provided that linear feet to our peer review consultant, and the DPW director provided me with a number that would be equivalent to that, in which the applicant agreed to pay that in lieu of building sidewalk. And in terms of identification, the board can identify use, so a nexus to that project. So the project will benefit from sidewalk improvements, and it will go to the town, and the town will identify locations for those funds.
So I guess the big thing that myself, as well as my neighbors in Reservoir Drive, are asking is that a portion of those funds are used to not only replace, because you're going to do the road, you're going to do the berms, but a portion of those funds are used to replace the sidewalk as well. Just a strong recommendation from the planning board, just knowing that somebody's in our corner, really. That's all we're looking for. I understand that you'll have to determine where that money goes, but it makes sense to us that you're doing a project in town, you're doing it right next to Reservoir Drive, you're going to be here tearing up the road anyways. Just looking for a strong recommendation for some of those funds to be used where you're displacing it. That's all.
Is it possible for a condition, based on what Mr. Wade said, that neighborhoods impacted by this project be given careful consideration for access to those monies?
Yeah, we could certainly, I can certainly provide you with some language for consideration when drafting the decision. Absolutely.
Sean, so I think we'll, look at it from an overall standpoint. And we'll look at, the area impacted, and we'll have something in the conditions.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Should address that.
Bill, on that point, can I ask one question? Jim, are the sidewalks on that road being disturbed? Or is there existing sidewalks there? Are they being disturbed in the process?
No, there will be no disturbance off the roadway. It's the sewer will be down Reservoir Drive.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as long as you're on this subject, we did notice that we will be running a roughly 4-foot deep trench down the middle of the road, which is probably 26, 28 feet wide. So we don't expect to go closer than 10 feet to the existing berms. And there are existing berms on that road that provide the drainage. So when we saw the decision that listed, repaving Reservoir Street, which we understand, we're digging up the road and they're going to get a brand new road. And this road isn't disappearing. It is at the end of its useful life. So this is a really good thing that's happening on Reservoir Road. They're going to get a brand new road. But this is the first time that we saw that they were going to get new berms. They were going to be asked for new berms because there are berms existing on the road. We don't plan on disturbing those berms that are there.
Mr.
Jim, I
Chairman,
thought that was
Yeah.
a condition
if
for,
I may, so there was a discussion previously about those berms, and I believe the discussion was that you will be paving overlay from curb to curb, and where it's important for drainage purposes to make sure we have a unified berm. So I believe the discussion revolved around making sure that the berm itself at that location is in good shape, and where there isn't a berm or if berm in poor condition, that they would be repaired so that we have one full set from curb to curb of new road with proper drainage at that location, as many of the neighbors have concerns about drainage on that road.
We're happy to provide berms where there are no berms. So if we see areas that have no berms, we'll install berms. But there are existing berms already there that are already functioning. So I didn't know why that was added into there. This was something that was new to us. We know the berms are old. We know the sidewalks are old. We know the road is old. We know it has, you know, and I think that's what the abutters, and that's why they're raising a concern, because they have a road that is at its end of its useful life. But they will be getting a brand new roadway, which is a substantial improvement over what they have now, in addition to access to sewer, which is a good thing, and we're happy to do that, and we want to be a good neighbor. We do. But the amount of money that we're donating is, I think it was like 146. I think the number was.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's a substantial amount of money that, you know, as far as we understand, that's it's going to be the DPW who decides how to allocate that money towards the sidewalk fund. That's, we understand, but we don't know firsthand.
Jim, I would like to go back. I was under the understanding that when they're putting a new road in, the requirements are to put from berm to berm get replaced with the road. Am I praying under a false pretense? Is that written down?
Right, so that's in your draft conditions under consideration, and it's always the discussion with DPW that where there is no berm, we put berm in place, and where there's poor condition berm, that is rehabbed or replaced. So that, I mean, it's ultimately up to the board for discussion, but that's been what we've been considering at this time.
I'm in agreement with that.
I think, Mr. Chairman, what they say, curb to curb, they say curb to curb because they don't want us just patching the trench. We're going to make a 4-foot wide trench down the road, and they don't want us just to patch that 4-foot wide trench. And it's standard. What we do in all towns is they say, if you're going to dig up our road, we want you to patch the trench, and then pave the road curb to curb. And this is a condition that most towns impose on contractors. We understand that. But they generally don't go further than the curb to curb and include the curb and include a sidewalk. They just say curb to curb. Now, this is what we've experienced in the past. Doesn't mean that anyone's held to any certain standard. This is just generally accepted practice. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Jim wanted to pull up the sewer map.
Do that. Okay, can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is Reservoir Drive here. It's flipped upside down just because of the profile. So north is to the bottom of the page. So this is Reservoir Drive here, Lake Street. This is the Jollikers' residence, and this is the new location of the easement through the cemetery. So what we ended up doing, we have to come in at this location because, you know, that's where the sewer line is coming down Reservoir. So we have to line up with Reservoir. So we held that distance, which I believe is like 75 feet or so from the edge of the easement to the property line. So we held that the entire way including to this angle point. So we never get closer to their property than where we are here, and we can't change that location. So this is what it looks like now. We soften that angle so it doesn't make a sharp turn towards their property. So that's the new location, and I can show you, this is what it used to look like.
Okay. So that is a significant change.
Right.
Thank you for doing that.
Well,
Last thing, I didn't think that could be accomplished. And I appreciate you doing that.
sure, you're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
We have an issue in regards to the street. Here's my feeling. The ability to use Reservoir Road is a significant condition for this development. And also putting and I want to be clear, the emergency access road at the bottom of the street. I think from an aesthetic standpoint, if we go with tarring just berm to berm, it's gonna look, you have a new street with all berms. I think since we're doing this, that I would like to see it go berm to berm. That's just my viewpoint as one board member, to make things consistent all the way through.
So, Mr. Chairman, we are going berm to berm. You mean adding berms? That's what you mean.
Adding berms, replacing berms, and it looks more.
Removing all the existing berms and adding new install new berms is what you're asking.
Correct.
Bill, if I can ask a question, Steve, what's the financial impact for adding the berms and doing all of that? Is that a significant expense?
I don't know the number. I wasn't prepared to speak to that, honestly.
Anyone else from the public have any input or questions to be asked other than this, or recording this? Mr. Wade, you have seen the changes for the Jollikers. They appear to be happy.
Yeah, it looks much better. Thank you, both the applicant and the planning board. Thank you.
Sir, Mr. O'Connell, may I speak? My name is Brian Rhodes. I'm the abutter to the north of the parking lot.
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. Mr. Venacasa met with the abutters a little while back, and when I met with him, I was talking about the privacy tree line between,
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and one thing I had brought up was during all the construction phase, if they would be able to put in the tree line right away. He suggested against it because it might not survive, so I agreed with him. That made sense. I wanted to verify that he was going to be putting up a construction fence until the privacy line is built. That was one of the things that he had mentioned in the meeting when we were meeting at the Bungie Brook Golf Course. He said that they would put up a fence, and I guess they can put a line around the fence to kind of cut down on the sound and the dust and all that. And
Go ahead.
I was wondering if that's a condition that can be added or how that works.
I think that it can be accomplished two ways, and Jim can correct me if I'm wrong. It could be a condition that can be added, but also may be appropriate to put it in under construction decision, Jim. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. We could tackle it in both ways as long as the applicant's comfortable with that as well. You know, a condition, but also should be reflected on the plan, just outlining just right along the property line there, very likely just silt fence and dust fence for this location, and along maybe any other areas that are somewhat close to residents, though your limited disturbance is pretty far.
Brian, what we're also looking at is overall entering and exiting that property during construction is to minimize dust as best we can. And that will be in the construction decision. That will come out at a later point in time.
Thank you, sir.
We do look out for the benefits of the neighbors and the abutters during construction.
Yes, Mr. Venicosa was very accommodating when I met with him.
And we appreciate that from the applicant.
Thank you.
His construction requirements are fairly substantial. Any questions from any board members or the public? So Jim, I think the next step is to potentially draft the conditions based on what we've heard this evening and what has already been drafted. Also to look for a potential decision to be drafted for, I'm thinking maybe the March 10th meeting, a month from tonight. Jim, does that seem reasonable?
I think that's more than enough time. I could certainly complete a draft decision, and I'm sure Land Design Collaborative can certainly get those last sheets in and the other items that were requested from Jim and Frank.
I think my land design is going to have those sheets done next week. Is it possible we could meet quicker? I think we're down to just the smallest of items here.
Mr. Chairman,
We have a rather substantial meeting, sir, on February 24th. So that's why we thought we'd push it off to the 10th. Does that impact your decision greatly?
We just have other parties that are involved that, anxious, that's all.
I understand.
I don't want to get into that with you. There's also a couple other things I'd like to bring up if we can talk about some other things now.
Floor's yours, sir.
One was the sequence of construction. We were hoping to, when we could get a building permit on the project, and as far as we could, if we could start a model building up right away before the infrastructure of the road is in. It takes us about 4 to 5 months to build, a model, to furnish it, to show for presentation. We also want to start working on the clubhouse, which I don't believe that's an area that we deal with the planning board on. I think we're dealing with just a building department. We're planning on doing some renovations to the clubhouse and making that into sales and selection and try to enhance that for the use of the future homeowners. We've got some really attractive ideas for that clubhouse. But we wanted to build a model home in there initially that we could start right away, and then know if that's something that we can do automatically, or if we need the board's permission to do that, or how would that work?
Steve, I'll turn that over to Jim. I think part of the phasing, the construction aspect, but Jim can clarify that.
Right. So when you say phasing, I don't think you really mean like phasing of units, right? You're likely doing this mostly in one grand phase. You're referring to just putting up your first model home and doing some early renovations. So the process here, so no work can be started before the appeal period is complete. So you get your decision, you got your 30-day appeal period. From that, we could certainly, before the appeal period is over, have a pre-construction meeting if you like, where we could have the building inspector, DPW, et cetera, all in, and we could go through conditions in order. At that time, you'd be working with the building inspector to certify whether or not he's comfortable with releasing for that model home. But we have done that in the past. Actually, we've worked with you in the past on Pine Hollows to get that done. So I don't think that's an issue as long as everything's moving in proper order. Obviously, no model and no renovations before the appeal period ends. But we can certainly talk about a model as long and making sure that, as we just talked about with our direct abutters, making sure that all that construction, fencing, and entrance points are in good order. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay.
Jim, for clarification, I apologize, Steve, I interrupted you. For clarification for the public, can you just let them know the departments are involved in the pre-construction meeting to show how much depth is brought to this with the developer and the town?
I'm sorry, Bill, what was that?
Can you provide some detail as to what departments are involved in the pre-construction meeting?
Oh, yes. So typically, once the appeal period expires, though, we can work towards the end of that deadline if it looks favorable for the applicant. We sit down with each and every department that's applicable. So myself, conservation, the police department, the fire department, the building department, really any board of health, very likely, and we go through each and every department's conditions and orders. Because while the applicant's before us, he's also spending his evenings with conservation and later going to maybe to the Board of Health and others. So each one has their own role and each one will have their own criteria and conditions. So, police will look at it in terms of hours for construction and being able to come in and out at appropriate times, making sure that the general public is cared for in terms of noise and safety. Fire is obviously going to have their own protocols for entrance and access at all times. Building department will have every step of the way what can and can't happen in what order. And DPW, obviously, for infrastructure purposes, they'll likely be first up for that sewer connection. So there's a lot involved in the pre-construction to make sure that everyone's moving in the same direction. That has to happen early.
And that's in collaboration with the applicant, correct?
Yeah, whether he likes it or not, he has to join in and hear us.
No, I've been to a lot of pre-construction meetings and they're all very similar. All the major players in the town are part of the process, and it's the way it should be. And there's less missteps that way. This world is a better place with more communication.
I know it worked out well at Pine Hollow.
It did, and town work. We worked well with the town worked well with us. It was a good relationship, and I'd like to have this be the same. Mr. Chairman, further consideration. The impact of the people on Reservoir Street, I'd like to make an offer, a bona fide offer of installing new curbs there. I have to say that it would look very attractive there and it would be a benefit to them. And I think that, a number of the board members are looking towards that. And I'll just say that we will concede and we will remove the berms and install new berms on the road.
So that's much appreciated from my viewpoint. And I'm sure the board, and I know you're trying to work with the neighbors as best you can.
We are, and we work with pretty much all the neighbors in there, and we want to be a good neighbor. That's very important to us, and I know it's important to you also. I know you've stressed that many times to us to work and communicate with the neighbors, and we have done that. So I'm happy to provide that. But I would ask the board's indulgence if we could move the process along because of some of the people that are working. They want to know whether they're going to start opening the golf course or we're going to move forward. And as you know, the decision is, we've seen a draft decision. It needs some further tweakings, but essentially, I think we're at the 1 inch line at this time with you, with the conservation, with all the boards, and we'd like to think we can get it over the goalpost this time with maybe just a little push. think we can make this happen. And then we still have to wait the 21-day appeal period. And we still have a number of other hurdles to jump through once we accomplish this. So if we can move this up, move that forward, we would very much appreciate it.
Jim, did say earlier.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, can I have a
yes,
second?
sir.
So just to let you know, I'll be on a plane on February 24th at the time of the meeting. So I'll let you make the decisions on that, but just an FYI.
Okay,
First one I've missed in 5 years.
okay. Jim, looking at our meeting, is it realistic? And I would like to have Phil there. I understand that, as board members, we have lives we have to live. The developer's working in a schedule. We're talking about a current golf course. What's your advice, Jim?
In terms of getting it prepared and ready, I think all parties can have it ready for that meeting on the 24th. I completely understand your packed agenda, though. You do have a very full agenda. It's up to the board. If you'll just know that it will likely be a late night if we're adding this one.
Let me look at a possibility. Is it feasible that we could do a one item agenda meeting on March 3rd? Because I know the 28th is robust, 24th is robust, excuse me. And Phil, when will you be back?
I'll be the 3rd. I would be available.
So that's a zoning board night. just so you know.
I'm sorry?
It's a zoning board night.
So
Okay.
if you were to entertain the 3rd, I would just ask for you to propose perhaps maybe a 6:15 meeting or something like that.
I would keep it even. I think we could do 6 o'clock. Brian, is that doable?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Any other board members have any concerns? Steve, I think at this point, we could amend the schedule to do a special, well, not a special, but a one item agenda meeting on March 3rd. And then that night, based on what happens, I believe you thought it was, Jim, it's 30 days for the deal, correct?
Right, yeah, in Bellingham, the development plan is 30 days. Special permits are 20 days. But so ultimately, you're going to be, the longest one is going to be 30 days.
Why is it 30 days, Jim? Because I thought it was 20 days.
Yeah, 20 days is the special permit that you're applying for. Also, you have a development plan, which is 30 days, and stormwater permit. It's the local site plan regulation, which requires a 30-day appeal period, which is part of this.
That's the stormwater permit. That's 30 days.
Yeah, development and stormwater. You're also applying for a special permit, which I understand that is 20 days. So that will end on the 20th day. You still have another 10 days for the others.
The stormwater. And the stormwater permit is the conservation, or that's a, no, okay.
Once you have decisions in hand, I can show you each one of them.
Thank you.
Steve, can you work with that?
Yeah, yes, and I appreciate the board very much so. Thank you very much.
Ordinarily we don't do it, but I do factor in, you have a golf course, you have a schedule you want to deal with. One of our members will not be available on the 24th. So I think this is probably the best solution at this point in time.
Okay, so March 3rd, 6 o'clock.
So what I need,
Can I ask one more
the
question?
motion. I don't think I received a motion to draft the conditions and a favorable decision for May 23rd. I'm sorry, May 3rd.
March 3rd.
March 3rd, excuse me. That was a mistake.
I missed that too.
Brian,
Yeah, so I'll move to, or so moved.
do I have a second?
Second,
So we have a decision. Jim, do I need to extend any dates?
We'll work with the applicant on that. Not a problem.
Steve, did you have another question you wanted to ask?
Yes, I did. On the affordable housing component.
Go ahead, sir.
I just want, would I be working directly with the board or be working with the housing? Is there a housing department within the town of Bellingham that I'll be working with for the affordable components of the housing? We've done different types of housing, and the housing that I'm thinking of is approved on the Mass State Housing Registered. We've done some housing for people with disabilities, and I just wanted to, who would be the contact person in the town that I would be working with for that component.
Jim, before you answer that, technically, we have a motion on the floor that has to be acted on. And I don't think this discussion is going to impact that motion. So, for proper Robert's rules, I think I need to call for the motion, sir.
I understand.
In favor of the motion is read and seconded. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, that motion passes unanimously. Now, Stephen, I think it's appropriate that Jim could address your question based on rules.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
The short answer is welcome back. You talk to me for the permit for the inclusionary housing, and the permit granting authority is the planning board. So we can certainly talk to you about that, and we'll start that process. That will be a condition of this permit to execute that special permit.
Okay, thank you.
So for the general public, next will be discussed on a one-item agenda meeting on March 3rd at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for those people here. For that
Bill,
item, thank you.
Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want a clarification. That's going to be a Zoom meeting, or are we being in person?
Yes, that will be Zoom because it's
Very
one.
good. Very good. Thank you.
Bill, before we can move to continue this hearing, I just have one quick question for Jim. Jim, I know we didn't discuss the conditions tonight, and I'm not looking to do that, but will there be a condition, or is there a condition somewhere in the plan regarding the plowing of snow into the access or the emergency access road? I think it should be from the public way into the lot. I would imagine that would have to be some sort of condition.
Yes, that was certainly discussed at a previous meeting, so we certainly can incorporate that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? The next item on the agenda is
Bill, I think we should, I'll make a motion to continue the hearing until March 3rd. Or did we already do that?
We did that.
I thought we, in essence, did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you're all set. You did do
All right.
that.
Very good.
So the next item on the agenda is to continue public hearing on 152 Depot Street North. we received an updated plan set. And Jim, can you give us an overview of what has been updated before we turn it over to the applicant?
Absolutely. So 152 Depot Street has gone through a number of progressions. You're in receipt of an updated plan set from the applicant. You've also received a response from our sound peer review engineer, as well as our stormwater peer review engineer. So I believe Greg Tachi from Kavanaugh and Tachi is on the line, as well as Frank DePietro, as you all know, from BSC. To discuss stormwater. A lot of improvements have been made to the plan. I'm sure the applicant will walk us through that. So in your package, you should have the updated plan set, peer review responses from both of our engineers, and I believe, no, I'm sorry, response back to BSC hasn't been completed yet, but in fairness, I believe they got it this morning. So that should be it.
I'd like to adjust the order in which we want to discuss things. I know we're expecting to hear from the applicant, but after our last meeting and hearing from the abutters, I've reached out to the Bellingham Police Department, and I believe we have a representative here this evening from the police department. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we do, Mr. O'Connell. Chris Padula, Bellingham Police.
Officer Padula, thank you very much for coming out.
You're welcome.
I'm sure we've heard some concerns expressed by the neighbors on Depot Street. Can you tell us what has been done to address the concern of trucks parking on the side of the road from early morning to, from like 4 in the morning to around 7 in the morning?
Yeah, I believe we spoke to DBW and they installed 9 no parking signs, both sides of the road. We've conducted additional building checks in that area and try to move people along, and it seems like the situation has dissipated slightly.
Have you done any ticketing of people?
I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't involved in any ticketing personally, but I believe some have been issued.
Okay,
Certainly warnings have been given.
that's right. Warnings is better than ticketing.
Yeah, there is definitely, the drivers are aware there's an increased police presence. So it seems that it is dissipating.
And is that something you'll continue to monitor?
Yes, yes, sir, we will.
Officer, I have also heard, and you hear a lot of things in town, I don't know how much is fact or fiction. I've heard some of the trucks are now staging in front of Walmart. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's hard to
prove it.
Yeah, it's hard to identify exactly which trucks are staging over there. Walmart's generally pretty friendly, and they don't tend
That's
to
a good
call.
way of putting it.
Yeah, they tend not to call, in my experience, and to have us push people along. They're pretty open with their lot, so it's tough to identify. Not all. There's a lot of third-party vendors, so not all trucks are identifiable as, Best Buy on the side of them, or wherever the origin or where they're heading. So it's difficult. They blend in, so to speak. So I can't truthfully say if that they're.
I'm not asking you to,
there.
sir.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure if that's their new staging area, but.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done so far. I know the neighbors will be appreciative that you continue to monitor on this moving forward.
Absolutely.
Time.
Appreciate it.
Officer Padula, thank you very much. The reason I wanted to move the schedule around, I'm sure you've had a long day, and I wanted to bring you up first so you can go home to your family then, if you're not on duty.
All right. No problem.
Officer Padula, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
And Jim, with that, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you. For the record, John Cusick with Boulder Engineering. Just take a quick step back. I believe this is our 5th hearing. At the last hearing, we discussed some of the comments we received from BSC. I think they were minor and easily addressable, but we talked about those and kind of presented with some of the plan changes that we were going to be putting into the full compiled set, and presented that to the board. So really that is what we've done. Everything we've kind of talked about to date has been compiled into a full set, which you have, addressing all of the peer review comments, all of your comments. And we believe it is a good plan that has everything accommodated. So what I'd like to just really quickly do is just recap kind of how we got to the point that we're at, and just talk about some of the changes that we've made. But again, when we started the project, it was a much larger project. There was really a second development abutting Box Pond Road that has been eliminated from the plans based on concerns from the neighbors, and we just focused on the north parcel. When we started the north parcel, and I'm going to just try to share my screen if I can. Let's see. All right, so when we started the north parcel, is that's showing up?
Yep.
Okay, great. This is the plan that we came in with. Again, one of the way it worked, it was a counterclockwise circulation in this regard, and loading was behind the building, which I think was very good. All of the loading was back here and screened and buffered from the receptors up on Depot Street. Through the process and our site walks and the hearings, it was requested if we could take a look at avoiding having some trucks back in this area. So again, to get to the loading, we were directing folks back this way. It was also requested to say, is there a way to get more of the buffer back in this area where we were doing some work? So we had talked about what we were going to do to the plan to address that, and we came up with this plan here, which we fully changed the circulation pattern. So now, instead of coming behind the building, all of the trucks come on this side of the building and stay back here, load, and leave this way. So this section of roadway does not have any trucks whatsoever on it, based on the comments we received. Since this section doesn't have any trucks on it, we were also able to get rid of that winding road that we had over here as well, and substantially increase the buffer that we had in this area. So I think those all really came out of the comments that we received from the board and the neighbors, and have incorporated into the plan that's been submitted. Again, it's worth noting, it was previously discussed that we are not going to be blocking off the entrance like some of the warehouses in the area. We fully understand the concern with stacking on Depot Street. That will not be an issue here. We are not blocking anybody from coming into the site, and we have a very large driveway to get back into our site. So we will be fully self-contained on our property. So what wasn't discussed at the last hearing, so as we're making these changes and submitting everything to address BSC's comments, we heard some of the comments at the last hearing about concerns to take into our sound study, which I think our sound study, we believe, showed compliance, but you had asked us to make sure that you're addressing any hitching sounds or anything along those natures. We took it a step further and added some sound walls on the plan in this location here for an added buffering of our impacts, which again are fully on the back side of the building. And then where the walls stop, we have also added, I think this came up on the site walk that we had many months back, but we also have a landscape buffer that we've added in this area here, which you can see on your plans. And that landscape buffer is evergreen trees. It's not shrubs or deciduous trees. It's evergreen trees that will provide year-round buffering here as well, on top of the wooded area that is proposed to remain. So as I mentioned, I think it's a really well thought out plan, and we've really, I feel as though we've accommodated really every site related comment that we've heard, and it is on the plan set that has been provided to you. I don't want to speak for your peer review consultants, but I took a look at the letter that we've got back, and I believe we've addressed all of the comments from BSC. I haven't seen anything back, but I believe we've addressed all of the comments from the sound review study that has been done. Again, I don't want to speak for others. I'll let them speak for themselves. And additionally, as a reminder, we've gone through fully with traffic, presented all of the information. We presented all the higher volumes that the board had asked us to present. That has been done, and we've proved that the mitigation is addresses anything that we do, and frankly, beyond that, again, the applicant is committed to providing mitigation in the form of a signal at Depot and Hartford, or a contribution up to $250,000 if the town would like to do more work at that intersection. This could go towards that. It's really up to what the town ultimately wants. So with that, that is really what has been changed. We think we've addressed everything we've heard, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. I think you're on mute.
Jim, could we have one of our peer reviews step up? And let's, I guess Frank would do the stormwater.
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman. So just adding a couple of details to the changes, besides what has been sort of already discussed. My understanding is the total building area is slightly smaller, somewhere on the order of about 10,000 square feet. There's a slight reduction in the impervious area on the site by eliminating that driveway near the westerly end of the site. The front area parking, if you look at the plan right now, it's on the right-hand side. That get reconfigured. There's 20 less parking spaces in there. What they've gone through, so they went through our peer review letter. We got the plans last week. We were able to go through them so quickly. Got a letter in this morning. That's why they haven't responded to it. And essentially, all of our comments from our original peer review letter in January have been addressed. A couple of items I will note. There is one waiver that has been requested from the planning board regarding the drainage. That is to allow, to not require that all catch basins have a inlet behind it. And that is because some of the catch basins are in the middle of the driveways. Wouldn't do too well to have a curb inlet sticking up in the middle of the driveway. I just want to go through any, that's all set. That's all set. They've added the details that they need in the catch basins and those items. They provided, one of our concerns was, again, because there is water ponding in the detention infiltration basins, our concern was, would that water back up in the drainage system? They provided hydraulic calculations of the water going through the entire drainage system. The good news is the water doesn't pop out of the catch basins. They still function. So again, I don't have any issues with that. They provided information to ensure that the material they're using for the pipes, high density polyethylene, would in fact be able to take a truck driving over it. They provided manufacturers information on that, and they have sufficient cover. There are a couple comments about related to where the driveway used to go outside into the aquifer district. I'm sorry, the watershed district. Those are gone because that area is gone. And we looked at the new site development layout. We don't see any issues. If you could shift it a little bit to the, I guess, to the left, there was an area near the front of the site. If you can pick that, the small area right by the driveway. Over in that area there. When we looked at that previously, it is a small area. And the concern we had was really the drainage system on site was above that. So if that little hole in the ground filled up, it would flow out into, or could flow out into Depot Street. And what they ended up doing is there's a catch basin about where, if you see this, is 74.1. About in that area there's a catch basin. They lowered the rim of that, so that will act as an overflow. So as water fills up in that little hole there between the driveway and Depot Street there, that catch basin will be an overflow. The water will flow into the rim into that catch basin, and that will, I think, sufficiently address that issue. We really have no other issues at this point in time with what was provided, and all of our items were addressed.
Frank, I have one question. Has anything been put in place to address any leakage of gasoline for a truck that is parked there?
The catch basins that are being proposed have deep sumps and hoods. That typically is a device that would address that issue. The structures they're using, they have water quality units. So typically, before you discharge into a detention or the underground detention area, all the runoff goes through a water quality unit, which would be a secondary barrier to pick up any leakage of oil or gas from vehicles or the parking lot drippings.
Okay. And when will you be able to respond to the applicant in writing?
That was my comment this morning. The letter that came in this morning, I basically reviewed. So other than items, there was one question on one of the earlier plans. There's an existing, well, there was a gas easement shown that went right through the building, roughly running north to south. The response was that they believe that easement has been extinguished. They're going to provide information to the planning board to that extent. There were several items that we had suggested originally that would be included as a condition of approval. In their letter, they agreed to that. And really, I think I don't see anything else that I need to get from them at this point in time, other than your decision on their waiver, a condition that requires them to provide that information on the easement, and conditions that would allow them or require them to implement certain items that they've said they're going to implement in their letter.
Thank you. Jim, the next person, I believe, is Kevin.
Mr. Tachi, I believe, if we could, for our sound analysis.
Yes, my name is Greg Tachi, Kevin Tachi Associates. And I had an opportunity to review the tech environmental letter dated on November 23, 2021. It talked about, presented a discussion of basic descriptors used to quantify sound levels, that described measurements that they made, talked a little bit about the noise regulations that are applicable here, which are the Mass DEP noise policy and the Bellingham noise bylaw. And they discussed a little bit about their modeling that was done in order to estimate sound levels in the nearest receptors. And they had reached conclusions that are basically summarized in their table 6, which presented existing sound levels and future sound levels. All the sound levels in the future are shown to apply to conform to applicable limits. Now, those computations were done, as far as I know, without the presence of the 12-foot sound barrier that's shown in the current plan, so that sound levels at some of the Depot Street residences are going to be slightly lower than reported in their table 6. The only comments that we had were basically looking for technical information, which they have provided in a subsequent letter dated January 13, where they revised their proposal, showed the location of the facility on a Google Earth image, and provided some sound power levels that were used in their computations, which were reasonable estimates of sound from those sources. The current plan causing trucks to be on the opposite side from Depot Street of the building is going to be a significant improvement as well. So we find that the tech work right now is favorable in terms of guarding against excessive sound at nearest receptors, and we have no further comment on it.
Greg, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to turn it over to the board members. I'd like to start with Rob. Hold on.
Did you say you wanted to start with me, Bill?
Yes, sir. This is
Oh.
your expertise. The stormwater.
I'm honored to go first. My goodness. I think I don't really have too many questions. I'm just looking over the plans and the comment response letter. I guess just two quick things regarding that low area that's now potentially going to be connected or draining into the drainage system. That shouldn't, it's pretty low. It's not going to inundate the pipes or your underground infiltration system, you don't think?
No, I honestly, I don't even think it's going to need to overflow based on the sandy materials, but it was a good comment to have a, a backup plan and belt and suspenders in case something happened. So I don't at all anticipate an inundation of the pipes. Like I said, the sandy material we have out on site, I suspect it's going to self-drain, but in case it doesn't, it will stay on our site rather than going onto the town's roadway.
Gotcha. Okay. Good. I guess, and then the other thing, I guess, echoing comment from another warehouse project, which it was regarding the LUPL standards and such, which I think, looking at your stormwater report, I think that you basically meet those. The only thing that I was wondering was, I know you have water quality units proposed for both the stormwater basin and then the underground infiltration chambers. Do you know off the top of your hand what the storage capacity is on your water quality units by any chance?
I mean, we sized it for the larger storm events when we sent it out for the 1 inch.
Okay.
If that's where you're going with that one, I suspect. So I think it's sized that way. Like I said, I don't think it's technically a LUPL, but again, everything we've done here, we really wanted to do belt and suspenders. Again, going back even from our flows, we used, Cornell, even though the planning board doesn't require that, we use that here. So we've really tried to make sure we were above and beyond.
Gotcha. The only reason why I was bringing up the comment with the LUPL is because if I know that it was my understanding that there was no tenant, and I assume there still isn't a tenant selected. So if somebody moves in, they have their own fleet, and there's on-site fleet storage that technically triggers it. So that's the only reason why I'm bringing it up. But as long as there's some type, if a saddle tank were to go, if there's some way to store the any type of oil spill or some sort before going into the infiltration basin, which it sounds like between the deep sump, hooded catch basins, and your water quality units, I think you have that. So I have no further questions or comments.
Thank you.
Thank
Brian?
Yeah, I think I have 3 questions altogether. John, can you explain the operation of is it a truck spin table that's been added to the?
Yes. Yeah. So essentially, I'll share my screen again real quick. Bear with me. Okay. So previously, the traffic came in, went this way, went around, and went into the docks and kind of went on its way. Because you like to typically load from a counterclockwise momentum. That's just more preferable for these loading operations. So what we've done is when you're coming in this way now, so we're going clockwise, we've added a spin right in here. So you'll notice the pavement kind of gets a little bit bigger here. It allows the truck drivers who want to enter from a counterclockwise direction, they can do that rather than coming in this way. That's really what that is.
Can you tell me how that operates?
It's still essentially, it's honestly, it's like a best way to describe it is it's like a cul-de-sac, for lack of a better term. But so you drive in this way, and then you'll keep driving around it. You don't have to do like a 3-point turn or something like that. It's just a continual movement, and then you can start driving in this direction.
Okay, so it's just a loop, basically.
It's a cul-de-sac, for lack of another word. It's just a loop.
All right. It is that loop what precipitated that sound wall to go there?
So I don't think it would have triggered it based on the sound levels that we had seen, but again, being sensitive to comments we've heard and everything, we just wanted to make sure we were going above and beyond and avoiding any issues. I think typically the louder sound levels, and again, I don't want to speak for the sound engineers, but they can correct me if I'm wrong. The louder sounds are typically like the hitching and and those types of operations, the loading operations. That's really shielded by our building. The driving of the truck really doesn't present as much of a sound level. But again, to be cognizant of the comments that we've heard and to try to address things, we've added that in that location.
Is there some sort of magic to the length and height and location?
Yeah, our engineer had looked at the at all of those. Frankly, that they looked at the height to make sure it was of an adequate height, and then helped with the location. In a perfect world, you probably would have wanted just to have one wall come straight across and just block it right up. But there were two issues with doing that. Number one, we needed to make sure we had access for the fire department, for emergency vehicles to come through here, so we couldn't block that. And secondly, this is the office portion of the building, so it's the glass front and whatnot. It just would have looked pretty uninviting to have a large wall coming right out of the corner of that. So we wanted to just set those back and have them be aesthetically pleasing while still providing the purpose that they serve.
All right, thank you. And so I guess for our peer review then, Greg, is that location of the wall, because I think that the previous studies, I don't know how things change, but the previous studies were done without the benefit of that rotary there. You're satisfied with the height and width and location of that wall, or can it be modified in a way to improve sound blocking? Or
Well, the original computation showed that the sound levels were slightly below the level needed to conform to applicable limits. And so the addition of the wall as it is a benefit. Could it be made greater? Well, yes, it could. Taller and longer would always provide a little bit more of a reduction. But the question is it really necessary? And I would say that based on the information provided to us, that that would not be the case. It was correct that the building will shield most of the noisy activities, the turnaround activity when trucks come down and circulate in a counterclockwise direction in order to reorient for backing into the bay doors is good, and that activity is not going to be especially noisy. So I think that the plan as it's shown here is acceptable from my standpoint.
So you're not concerned then with the clustering of trucks in that corner
I
making
wouldn't
that
believe
turn?
it. there would not be clustering, although most trucks that would be entering the site for purposes of docking at the building would use that circle. And so that's, but how does it, one way of looking at it is how does it compare to the original plan of circulating counterclockwise around the building? Well, I think you have a better plan right now with that that rotation that happens, the turnaround that happens at the end of the parking lot.
Right. This particular plan, though, sort of guarantees, not guarantees, but there's a strong likelihood that every truck that enters the site is going to go through that circle. And
yes,
that,
trucks will. The trucks that are going to dock will use that circle. Trucks that are going to be parked in the trailer parking, they would not use it.
right. And so you're comfortable then that the 12 feet is sufficient, the width is sufficient to block that, what I would suspect would be a lot of noise activity in that particular corner of the building.
Well, we haven't seen computations for it, but there is a 12-foot barrier. The federal highway source height for trucks is 8 foot. And so there would be screening of sound produced by that barrier as it's shown. The amount and whether it could be optimized a bit better by lengthening it, or if there's an argument for raising it, that's an extension of the work that so far we haven't seen, and that's something that might be undertaken by tech. But right now, this plan provides 2 improvements over the previous plan. One, by preventing driving in a clockwise and a counterclockwise manner around the building. That's taken away. And second, we have this barrier to screen the turnarounds. So I think the net of it is a little bit better than what we had before.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the effort that's been made to think of solutions to minimize impacts to abutters. But if we can take a look at that calculation and just verify that wall is proper height, width, location, I think that would be helpful, at least to me.
Sure.
To make
the way
sure
that would be done is for us to review their CAD computer model. And that's customary for peer reviewers to exchange these models with engineers. So we'd be pleased to do that.
I appreciate that. I don't have any other questions. You're muted, Bill.
Dennis, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, just a comment. Really appreciate the new design. I think that's going to make a huge different impact on the neighbors. And with the sound barrier there, that's a much appreciated improvement also. And I appreciate the developer for changing that.
Welcome.
Liz?
I just have 2 questions. With the reduction in parking spots, do we still meet the parking ratio for this development and all the regulations around that?
So warehouse developments, and again, we reduced the size of the building as well. For this type of a development, we're typically anywhere between a half of a parking spot per 1,000 square feet to 1 space per 1,000 square feet. We are at 0.9 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is right in line with industry standards. We do have a special permit for our parking. Bellingham, as you know, requires way more parking for industrial use than is needed. It's a two space per 1,000, which is the customary special permit that's requested for this.
Okay, thank you. And then I apologize if I missed it, but I know the truck traffic is flowing the other way now, but does that still happen when you expect the trucks to queue up when they can't get into the bays, or are they going to be queuing up because there's not a lot of room on that other side?
So Based on the layout, we don't anticipate any queuing or issues. It's going to be really wide open where they can get into the truck court. There's going to be nothing preventing them. I think an issue that happens with some other facilities is they have a fence right up on the road that just doesn't let anybody into the site. Again, based on the comments that we've heard and what the neighbors have had to endure based on some other operations, that isn't, we heard that loud and clear. We're not putting a fence up at the front, and we've got a plenty long roadway to get them into the site and off the site. That there won't be any truck queuing, let alone outside of the site.
Oh, I meant, yeah, I didn't mean outside of the site. I meant sort of we're moving the traffic the other flow direction. So you anticipate the trucks to come in, circle around, and then move right into the bays. They're not going to be on the driveway queuing.
No, they'll come in. I think a lot of times for some like larger facilities, you'll see them stopped in guardhouses, and they don't let them in at a certain, until a certain time. For this size and it's a lower volume type of a facility, that's not a problem. They're not going to be stacking up and waiting. They can get right in and go to their loading bay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Phil?
Yeah, can you expand a little bit about the circulation with the fire trucks? Is the path from the small parking lot into the truck area on the backside, is that paved or is there a grass area between? I think you showed a map. I can't tell from my drawings.
It's paved, so it's essentially the fire truck has full access through there.
And how do you recommend keeping the cars from coming out that way?
It's really the sign that the people that are there are going to be the employees. It's not like a retail site where folks are coming in and they don't really know where to go. But we'll have a signage, telling them, emergency, access only. And it's really, frankly, if they want. Sorry, what's that?
Yeah, no, I just see it being, you don't want cars and the trucks mixing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why we.
Possible.
Yep.
So there's going to be some signage there?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely want to avoid that. You're absolutely right. You typically want to separate the car traffic from the truck traffic, so we will not be encouraging that. And it's a quicker way out to go the opposite way and stay out of the truck court too.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
I have a couple of questions. To the applicant, if you recall at our last meeting, we spoke about reducing noise from the roofs, putting baffling on some of the air conditioning units. Has that been done?
So I know the units were run on the roof and they're included in the sound study to make sure that those wouldn't portray a nuisance sound. So I think based on the distances that everything is from where the roof is to the nearest receptors, I don't think the roof equipment would pose any really any issues.
I thought, Brian, didn't we have a concern about trying to muffle the noises on the roof or baffle them?
I know that the last meeting we talked about that being a potential source and making sure that it's not going to be a problem where they're located on the roof and how they're located. So
yeah,
that's been addressed.
Yeah, that's why we put that in the sound study. We revisited that, and that was what was included. The sounds from every piece of equipment on the roof was included in the sound study.
Okay. I noticed you have a lot of loading docks. I noticed we don't know who the client will be. We're assuming a worst case scenario. I have a question about when you're loading. Do your loading docks have curtains around the back of the trucks to reduce the noise?
I don't know the answers to that. So
You know how
curtains,
some of them have a curtain that extend a few feet out to reduce the noise?
I don't believe so. I think it's just a straight wall and dock. I'm not aware of a curtain being proposed here.
Can you look into that, please?
I can.
And then again, I'm picking up on the fact we don't know who the tenant is, and you've heard from the neighbors. We would like to reduce as much as possible noise from the hours of 10 until 6 or 10 until 5 in the morning. If you could just keep that in consideration, it'd be greatly appreciated. Also, I'd like to see if the, I've been not hopping on this, I've been mentioning it to the neighbors with regards to the idling law. You'll make sure your truck drivers meet the requirements of the idling law.
Yes, absolutely.
And then when the loading docks are not being used and you're doing any work inside, all those doors will be closed?
Correct. They wouldn't leave the doors open, and I don't see a need why they'd want to do that.
Those are all the questions I have at this point in time. Anything else on the board before I turn it over to the public? Before I turn it over to the public, I would just ask if you could keep your comments so far to items we've discussed this evening in regards to stormwater and sound and the comments made by the police department. Down the road, I believe we'll address traffic at the meeting in March. But I'd like to turn it over to the public. And does anyone have their hand raised?
I see a Mr. Bill Hughes.
Mr. Hawley?
Well, I'm not Holly, but being ugly Holly. I'm her husband.
Okay.
But Steve Goyette, 58 Boxbaum Road. Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you what I wanted to go over today, and you can tell me that it's not appropriate if you want. But what I did is, over the past several meetings that we had, I know we got together our concerns about this whole project. What I did today, and if it's not appropriate at this meeting, I can share it at the next, but I just put together the list as a whole. So instead of you hearing these over the past several weeks, I just wanted to quickly go through each one of our concerns so you had them as a whole. Again, if it's not appropriate, I still want to go over it, but if today's not the day, I will save it for another meeting.
How long do you think it will take you to go over that, sir?
I'll go as quickly as I can, but you can cut me off at any time you want.
I'll try not to cut you off, sir.
Okay. All right, let me go. I'll go quickly then. So what I did is I just did a list so you have everything at once here. And it's in no particular order. So I just wanted to first say that as a reminder, on the first meeting that we had, it was mentioned that it was an 8 to 5 operation. The board mentioned that it was going to be, they were going to be held to it. And then the second meeting, it was an oopsie, it's a 24/7. That was one concern. The second one is with regard to the traffic light. I want to reiterate that a traffic light at Depot Street and Hartford Ave with an arrow is really designed for a intersection that you can split the lanes. If you can't split the lanes, then you back that traffic up even further. The F-grade traffic at that intersection is correct, but what's not acknowledged is that F-grade traffic continues all the way down Hartford Ave. And a light there, the way it's being proposed, will make matters worse. Today, I just happened to take a drive down Hartford Ave. It's 10 side streets between 126 and Depot Street. All of those are a nightmare to get on and off to begin with. You put another warehouse in there, you put another traffic light, and then you back that up further and you make 10 side streets even harder to get on and off of. Number 3, the current issues with Best Buy, I know they were discussed. I'll be cautiously optimistic that it'll be taken care of, but I think the only way that you get permanent compliance with parking on the street is that you have a permanent enforcement, and I just don't think the police can do that on a permanent basis. But
Let me interject here for one moment, Stephen.
Sure, absolutely.
We've listened to you. We've had the police department come out.
Yep.
Taking measures. I think what you need to do is, when you have concerns, document it and call them. That's one reason specifically why we to them this evening.
Yep.
To let you know that it was not ears, that we are listening to what you're saying.
No, and that's why I said I'm going to be cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
Okay. I pointed out that residents have already moved out of town because of the traffic. That was another concern. The community character I brought up, that's compromised when warehouses like this come in. Home values, I mentioned that we're at the bottom 5 of 157 communities surrounding Boston. And that's directly related to the type of structures we have and how we're building out Bellingham. And I did want to, make note that just for the hell of it, I Googled, when warehouses, come to town. And the first thing that came up was a national article that came up. And listen to this. The very first paragraph in this national article, it says, Bellingham, Massachusetts, a suburb about 30 miles from Boston, has become a warehouse hub. Dunkin' Brands, Best Buy, Snyder's Snacks, and others operate out of a large industrial buildings with delivery trucks coming and going on a regular basis. That's the first paragraph of a national article about warehouses, Bellingham, Mass. I wouldn't say that would be, something that we would want to, make headlines.
Stephen, let me just stop you for a minute.
Yep.
I said I wouldn't interrupt you, okay?
Okay.
And I don't think that no, it's accurate what the article says. That does not take in consideration the person who drafted the article, the antiquated zoning set up for the town of Bellingham. In all fairness, sir.
Oh, okay. You said it does take into
Jim would substantiate that. That's just, someone on the outside. I know you're looking at the numbers, but they have no consideration into how Bellingham is zoned.
Oh, and I agree. I'm not referring to the zoning. I'm referring to the fact that the number of warehouses that seem to be being proposed in Bellingham and the numbers that are here has given the perception or the reality that we've become a warehouse hub.
Okay.
That's all. I mean, and again, from a resident's perspective, I don't think that's a good thing. That's all.
Okay.
And you can look up on your own. There's another article that says land grab. What happens when warehouses move next door? I won't go into it, but feel free to read it. It will lead to our concerns. But it's called land grab. What happens when they move next door? And then I have mentioned that even though we've got industrial sites, industrial zoning, that doesn't necessarily mean that the infrastructure around it can accommodate it. And I think we're faced with that on Depot Street. Next thing is, we're aware that I believe some residents have been offered money for the inconvenience of having this. And when money's offered, then it's typically because there's no benefit to the residents. It's a way to for the lack of a better word, silence them or to buy this.
Again, I'm saying, not interrupt you, but you're implying. Oh, go ahead, sir. Continue.
No, I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying that there's anything immoral, unethical, or illegal about it. What I'm saying is that when a resident is offered money for a large scale warehouse that's coming in, the only reason you're being offered money is because there's no benefit to it. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. That's what it is. There's no benefit. That's the mitigation that takes place.
Stephen, I said I would interrupt you, and I apologize again.
No, go ahead.
I've not heard of any neighbors, quote unquote, being offered money.
I have been told that one has been offered.
I have not heard that. That's the first I've heard.
Well,
that's all I can say.
Okay, well, I've heard from the neighbor, a resident that has been offered money. And I won't, give the name out. But if you need verification for that, that can be done, outside of this meeting if you want. But again, that's my understanding. And then obviously, pedestrian traffic on Depot Street is a concern. There's people of all ages walking that street with and without animals, elderly people, and adding yet another warehouse is an issue. And as I mentioned before, my son's car was totaled by a tractor trailer on Depot Street. And then, lastly, we have a petition with over 300 signatures on it now. Keep in mind that that petition is just an online petition. It doesn't involve anybody that's, not computer savvy. I suspect if we sat at Best Buy, if we sat at the Market Basket or Whole Foods, we'd probably get a ton more signatures. So those are the, as a whole, the areas that we're very concerned about. And there's been a lot of angst about it, just, for two good reasons. We've got two warehouses on Depot Street that, in our opinion, shouldn't have never happened. And secondly, a third one on that street, combined with a light that I don't think is going to help but make matters worse, makes matters even worse. And then I don't think I think there's a false premise that the warehouse will create negligible excess traffic. I don't believe that to be true either, because we know the traffic that Best Buy and Dunkin' has caused, and I can't see a third warehouse somehow being, negligible when we know what two like warehouses have caused. And then the last thing I'll say is, you all know how I feel about the word mitigation when it's used as a mistake, when it's really meant to be looked at in light of results of a bad decision already implemented. In this case, mitigation is referred to the form of $250,000 for traffic light that we believe won't have the desired effect. And again, if money is being offered to residents, neither of these come close to mitigating, unacceptable conditions that this will create for the residents of this town. So I can do more, but I know you want to keep it short and sweet. And so that's my thing for tonight.
Okay. Jim, I don't want you, your overview.
My overview, my response to comment?
Yes.
I think you did
We've
a
heard
great
him now
job.
for several meetings.
Yep. I think he did a great job putting together his comments. That's for the board to take in and digest. And certainly, when you're making a decision, you can have those comments in mind.
Okay. Anything else from the public? Bill?
Hi, guys.
Anything else that hasn't been brought up?
Yeah, well, I just want to start with pretty much the first thing Mr. Cusack said there. Can you clarify what he meant by they shut 148 down because of the fact that they were listening to what the neighbors' concerns were on that matter? So they shut that down. And now we have the same residents, actually 5 times more residents in this neighborhood that still do not want this in their neighborhood. Now, besides just that, now, believe me, I see the officers on Depot Street. They are sending them. I see them all the time. And when they're there, believe me, the trucks aren't there. But as soon as that patrol car is gone, all those trucks are lined up. It's just a fact. I mean, unless we're gonna sit a unit right there, they're gonna keep coming back. But unless we start talking about those 5 or 6 figure fines that you guys are talking about, it seems like everybody's getting a warning. I mean, these truckers are the same truckers throwing the mattresses, throwing the stuff on the sides of the road. These are all the same trucks doing that. If they're not there, it's not gonna happen. So start finding them. Don't give them little, I mean, I appreciate them being there, but they can only be there for so many hours. They can't keep sticking a patrol car there. I mean, it's overtime that the town can't afford to pay. But if we start giving some of these companies huge fines, they're not gonna be there. Maybe it will clear up that section of the road there, but we're already crammed. I mean, I know, across from us, we have all this commercial space and there's a little bit left in this town and everybody wants to cram these buildings in there so we can get as much money as possible. But We can't keep cramming this street with any more. It's just, it's already falling apart. You guys just fixed it from the trucks. It's already done. You guys haven't even come to my part of my road. You can't even drive down my road. Right now it's filled with snow. It's the best time it's gonna be. But I mean, if we can't fix our small little issues of our roads and stuff like that, why are we gonna keep adding to problems with these big trucks because they throw money at the town? I mean, listen to the residents. We do not want any more here. We already can listen. If I open my back slider and bring the computer out there, you guys can hear the other buildings running right now. We stick another one right over there with all these units going. I am up on the people's roofs or commercial roofs all the time fixing them. I can't go near these units without earplugs. The sound travels. I can hear these units all the way in the parking lots. It's not gonna help this town whatsoever for a little bit of money. And that's pretty much, I think Steve covered the rest.
Okay. No, thank you for your input.
And I'm sorry, this is Darcy, user, same address. But again, I'd like to follow up and ask Mr. Cusick to clarify.
Steve, she's a little muffled.
Was shut down. Why 148 was shut down and not 152 if it was based on residents' concerns?
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
So why was 148 shut down? 148 Depot shut down based on residents' concerns, and 152 is not shut down. And that question is for Mr. Cusick.
Thank you. I believe the applicant can answer that better than Mr. Cusick.
So I can speak to that. It was essentially when.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to hear feedback. I apologize. At the hearing, it was clear some of the folks in Box Pond Road were very concerned about that development because it did abut Box Pond Road. The applicant decided to not pursue that and thought it was a sign of good faith. He's still pursuing this site. He has every rights to do so, and but don't think you're ever going to make everybody happy. But it's something that's within his rights to pursue.
So just a follow-up question to that, it wasn't because the conserve did not approve it?
Or the lack of variances that you guys were gonna need?
No.
Okay, thank you for your time.
I believe we were Mr. Muldoon on 230 Depot Street. Muldoon.
Yeah, hi. How are you? Just
Fine, thank you, sir.
obviously Muldoon 230 Depot. I'll be quick, obviously. I mean, we rehash things over and over again. One thing that I'll note, the applicant noted that it wouldn't make sense why the loading operations after the trucks were loaded, the loading dock doors would be open. In our experience, as we currently live, Best Buy and Dunkin' Donuts have their doors open all the time. So, I mean, going forward, if for some unfortunate reason this is approved, is it possible to put in some sort of variant or something saying, look, you got to close the doors, you can't leave them open? Because if, as you requested, keeping on what our topics tonight, specifically the sound, that does increase on the sound. I recall some of our neighbors on Box Pond Road referring to hearing loud music, curse words, etc., coming out of, I assume, Best Buy, but I'm not sure. I don't go on Box Pond Road often, so I couldn't really tell you on that. But that his statement on that rings pretty hollow. Sorry, my child is screaming.
Mr. Muldoon, I asked the question of the applicant.
Yep.
They said it would not be done.
Yep.
I appreciate him at his word. However, as we move forward, if a favorable decision is reached, that will obviously be a condition as with other conditions.
I appreciate that.
So you respect of putting that in writing as we move forward, if it's appropriate, that would be a condition.
I appreciate that. And
You're welcome, sir.
I have one more thing that I'm going to say. Obviously, I'm trying to stick to your request. Moving forward, when we go to the traffic, this is for notes for the future. Is there a way to involve Mass DOT in Hartford, in the Hartford Street lights, etc., traffic, especially? And I know this may be outside your purview as the town of Bellingham, but obviously, I'm sure you know about proposed warehouses in Hopedale and Mendon right down the road. I understand that this isn't this developer, but obviously that would have a huge impact on Bellingham. It is really 99% of the traffic going to those towns aren't really going to be affected very much because Bellingham ends, and then those warehouses are going to be around a mile from my house. So really, Bellingham is going to suffer from that. So I'm not sure if it's something that's doable, if it's an appropriate thing, but is there a way to somehow get Mass DOT involved to ensure that, you know, the upgraded from F rating would actually be real? And if it's, you know, I recall that one of the previous traffic studies saying that the lights would be need timed because of everything like that. I'm just wondering if that's something that we can look into getting studied, so that when a decision's made, it's made with the reality of the information and not a very focused subset of the actual information.
Certainly. Jim, I think you can address that.
So that's an excellent point. You know, zooming out from this, I mean, this is one specific project with those impacts, and yes, that we're talking about a specific intersection, but we're talking really, if you're zooming out, about the corridor as a whole, Hartford Avenue, from really the town line all the way to, well, maybe the other town line over at Medway, but more specifically the highway. The town is engaged in looking at that whole corridor. We jumped on it a few years ago. Unfortunately, you may not be surprised, but things take a long time here in the public sector. And we have been vetting it though, and actively looking at improving Hartford Avenue and getting it shovel ready. Being shovel ready meaning having formally designed improvements from, I don't know if it's end to end, but certainly from the Hopedale side of things to the highway, in hopes that maybe we could work with the state in getting funding for even more improvements than just what's contemplated here.
Jim, is it fair to say with the infrastructure bill, we're looking at that possible application as well?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm sure for a lot of folks that seems a little bit abstract, but once we heard that the federal administration is looking at infrastructure, we actually worked with our representatives early on to be prepared for that. So we are working towards that, as well as things at the state level, and every opportunity for grants, as you may be already aware.
Jim, is there a way that I can see what's being proposed for Hartford, or is that not really for public consumption at this point? I can email you on the side if it's something like, if something like that, like if there's a link or something like that, I can send you an email so you can provide that to me if that's makes it easier.
Yeah, I can reach out to see what the status is. DPW is leading that cause, but if it's not ready just yet, I know they certainly make it publicly available once we get to an appropriate design level.
Yeah, I assumed as much. I just wasn't sure where it was at this point. That's all.
Mr. Noble, we'll try to get that to you as quickly as possible.
That's appreciated. That's appreciated. Finally, one thing about the sound. With the evergreen trees being, this is for the developer, with the evergreen trees being planted on the corner of the property as an additional noise abatement, are those new trees being planted, or are those trees currently there? Because if memory serves, it's pretty sparse in that area, but I'm just curious as we're talking about sound.
So through the chair, couple things. So relative to that specific question, the trees that are there, again, are going to stay based on the comments we had on the site walk and what we had heard. Wanted us to try to protect some of those trees that were there. That was, I think, a big benefit of one of the site improvements we made per your request. That said, we wanted to take it a step further, as I mentioned before. Even though the site is fully wooded with mature trees, they're taller trees. We wanted to provide an understory as well for screening further for the folks on Depot Street. Again, we're quite a distance away, and there's a lot of trees between here and there, but it was an opportunity to provide some lower storage evergreen trees that would remain green year round. So we added that in addition to the existing trees that would remain.
Thank you. Mr. Muldoon, does that address your question?
Yeah, I think I'm good for tonight. Obviously, just trying to stick with your request to stay on topic.
Sir, thank you very much. And I encourage your participation in future meetings.
I will. You know I will.
I appreciate it, sir.
All right. Thank you.
We have Sherry out there.
Hi, yes, I'm Sherry Berry from 49 Box Pond Drive. I just wanted a quick note, along with all the other residents with their complaints or comments, I just wanted to add, I'm all the way on Box Pond Drive. I can hear the trucks as well. I can hear all the noises, along with all the traffic and everything else. So, all the way on Box Pond Drive, I can hear that. I can hear the beeping. I can hear all the noises. So, we need the sound barriers. If this gets approved, we need anything we can get. It's just the sound travels, especially in the summer. I mean, out there, this project, like it was originally presented, it was supposed to be 9 to 5 or whatever. And now 24/7, I mean, that's really like a real burden on ordinary life. So I just had to add that. I'm here every meeting. I listen to this. I listen to all the residents. I agree with them. I might not speak. There's a lot of other people that might not speak, but I want you to know that there are many residents that maybe don't go to these meetings, but they hear this. They hear from, all these other people. So please listen to us, when you're considering.
We are.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And Sherry, thank you for participating.
Thank you.
We've walked through, we hear everything you say. And we've also set a meeting up. I believe, Jim, you met with the neighbors at one point to give them an overview of the process.
Yep. Yeah, good conversation with a few of the folks.
I see Diane C. has her hand raised. Diane? Can you see anyone else with their hand raised?
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised. Oh, we have Casey.
Casey, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I thought I hit the unmute
Thank
button.
you.
Casey Pettipa, Haggerty, 226 Depot Street. Obviously, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I did have a comment regarding stormwater. Someone stated they could not picture a scenario where it would not drain given the soil. That soil is the same as my backyard, I'm assuming. I'm not that far away. I can tell you a scenario, and that would be this past weekend, where it was the snow and then the rain and then snow again. The gas easement behind our house currently probably has about 5-6 feet of water in it. And at one point, my backyard was definitely a giant puddle. So just for planning purposes, there is a scenario where this soil does not drain. That's really all I had to say. And I don't know if that affects anyone's plans or anyone's understanding of how the stormwater will work. But there are scenarios where it doesn't drain. I can't go outside right now. It's
See,
too wet
what
out
I
there.
like to do is
What
have
was that?
the applicant and our peer reviews rework those calculations based on the information you provided this evening. Is that realistic to request from the applicant? You have somebody, your closest abutter, I believe on Depot Street, expressed some concern that the numbers may not be accurate based on experience.
I mean, I'm thinking it mostly will drain, but I am thinking that there are specific scenarios like the weather we've had in the last 2 weeks, where it might become an issue. Like I said, the easement that's between, that's on my land that backs up to the train tracks, that of course then backs up to them, is currently filled with water, which happens fairly regularly. That's usually pretty full, but it's very full right now. And my backyard does generally drain very well, but we had standing water for quite some time. Several days worth of it, at least, where it was significant, just puddles. Based on their descriptions of the soil they have, I'm assuming ours are pretty close. So just to be aware that it can have times where it will not drain. That was all.
Casey, thank you.
Would you like me to speak to that now, Mr. Chairman?
Sir, if you could, excuse me.
No, absolutely. Again, I feel very, very confident with the drainage, soil testing that we did, the drainage system that's in place, and frankly, the oversizing of the drainage system that we do have. Again, just to reiterate, I do believe the water is going to drain in that small area. I don't think there's going to be an issue. However, per your peer reviewer's request, and it was a good request, we have provided an overflow onto our site in the case that it doesn't. So it wouldn't be a town or an abutter burden, and the very, very, very small chance that it did not drain. So I think that issue is fully covered and has been reviewed by your peer reviewer. And I don't want to speak for him, but it was worth noting.
And again, I apologize to Casey because I don't know her property. I was out at a site yesterday and a couple sites in Bellingham. The ground is frozen. And so one of the things you don't look at as part of a hydraulic review is frozen ground conditions, because that does two things. One, not only does the water not seep into the ground, it stays there as well in low areas and stuff like that. Again, I don't know anything about your property, so I'm not saying that I believe what you're saying and stuff like that, but I just would note that that's not a standard condition when you look at a hydraulic modeling situation. So.
All right, thank you for explaining that.
All right, now I think Bill may have stepped away for a moment.
All right. Any more questions? Jim, do you see anyone
Any
else?
more questions? Jim, based on tonight, I think it's probably appropriate to ask this to be continued to March 10th.
I think that's appropriate, yes.
And the topic would be?
I think what we would be doing at that point is wrapping up any outstanding items and, and reviewing those.
And traffic as well?
Yes, including traffic. Yep.
Okay. I entertain a motion for continuance until the March 10th meeting. I have a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor has been seconded. Can continue the 152 Depot Street warehouse to March 2nd. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. To the public, honestly, I want to thank you for all your comments. I encourage you to participate moving forward. I look forward to seeing all of you at the March 10th meeting. Thank you very much, the applicant and the consultants, peer reviewers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. We all had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting.
Yep, I have one suggestion. On page 5, I think it's on the very bottom, there's the comment section. I think it says spillage of trucks, or the concerns about spillage of trucks. I think it's supposed to be spillage from trucks.
That's a easy fix. Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Amy.
That's an easy fix.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the minutes as
So moved.
amended.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of accepting the minutes amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Bill, one more thing before we adjourn,
Yes.
if you don't mind.
Certainly.
Board members, I just want to make you aware that we will have the Mylars for Red Mill coming in tomorrow. I'm not sure what time those will be in at, but I would really appreciate everybody getting down before Wednesday to get those signed, because the applicant wants to get those recorded. So again, if you could make a big effort to get those signed, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Ideally, if we could try to do that Monday or Tuesday, it'd be appreciated.
That would be great.
Brian, the floor is all yours. You've asked for a motion for adjournment. It's been approved. Brian,
Good night, Bellingham.
thank you very much.
Night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.